My name's Hubert Danso. I'm the CEO and chairman of Africa Investor Group. We're an institutional infrastructure investment platform with a particular focus on Africa, partnering with African as well as international institutional investors. And I also chair the African Union's Continental Business Network, which reports into leading African heads of state on infrastructure investment. And I also chair the African Green Infrastructure Investment Bank's advisory board. It's absolutely crucial that governments do raise their ambition, of their nationally determined contributions substantially before COP27. So there's going to be a lot of activity and support, at least in the African continent, to work with governments in that particular endeavor. But we also believe that, on a global basis, it's going to be essential to monitor the implementation of all pledges made at COP26 and hold governments to account where appropriate. I mean, we need that enabling environment. We need that high ambition to be able to deliver that sort of climate security that we all know that it's incumbent upon us to deliver for future generations. So as the asset owner community, we also have our work to do. We recognize that. We have a very, very important leadership role to play in COP27. The institutional investment leadership expectations have already been set for the road to COP27. We already knew it was going to be in Africa. We knew that it was going to have a big just transition focus. And we also knew that there's going to need to be a lot of innovation around how we can, mobilize private capital on an unprecedented level in terms of scale for developing an emerging market. So we know that that's going to be a very big and core part of the agenda. So as the institutional investment community, we really expect to drive very transformative capital mobilization and strategic allocation work, in the run up to that, with a particular focus on innovative risk-sharing models between the public and the private sector and private capital, long-term capital. We foresee a number of announcements from institutional investors on how long-term capital will not only decarbonize our portfolios, but also how those decarbonized portfolios will green the real economy and address Scope 3 emissions in emerging and developing countries. And I think part of one of the sobering realities is that while Scope 3 seems to be quite daunting, ecosystem-wide, corporate value chain-wide, I think that it's been simplified by many stakeholders who simply say, look, someone's Scope 1 and 2, which is the easier one that sort of collectively represents 30%, whereas the elephant in the room is really Scope 3, which represents 70% of the need to decarbonize in that particular space. Someone's Scope 1 and Scope 2 is someone else's Scope 3. So that we actually think that the institutional investment community have taken the decision that we can be very, very catalytic in creating that virtuous correlative and coordinated action to be able to, take on some of those big challenges in emerging markets, in developing countries and globally, particularly on Scope 3. During COP26, the African Green Infrastructure Investment Bank announced the launch of our advisory boards. We've created a dedicated advisory board for COP27, which is our own African Green Infrastructure Investment Bank advisory board, COP27 committee, and that is designed to support the COP27 investor engagement and capital mobilization process. We're working with and through the African Union the African Union Development Agency and the Continental Business Network, along with the African Green Infrastructure Investment Bank, will act as the institutional investor coordinating body for asset owner initiatives from both domestic and global pension and sovereign wealth funds and other institutional investors in the run-up to Sharm el-Sheikh. So taking account of all of the leading asset owner groups, we've factored them all in, most of their CEOs, Institutional Investor Group on Climate Change, Investor Leadership Network, the G7's Pension Fund Group, the International Federation of Sovereign Wealth Funds, Long-Term Infrastructure Investors in Africa, CFA Asset Owners Council, Global Infrastructure Investors Association, Pacific Pensions Institute, all of their CEOs and presidents are part of that initiative. So we're taking a really global approach to this. So we have no doubt that this COP27 is going to be very, very fertile ground and result in several best-of-class asset owner-led initiatives and proposals being delivered. Our committee is certainly going to be primarily, in the first instance, building on the important work and momentum from COP26's finance track, GFANS, the Sustainable Markets Initiative, the 130 trillion consortium plus. And we really want to make sure that what we are going to be delivering creates that pathway and that continuity, so that we can actually deliver in a very seamless fashion. And on the road to COP27, we will be stopping off at some major global events: the UN General Assembly in New York, the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Rwanda, the G7 in Germany, and the G20 Summit that will be hosted in Indonesia. So the African Green Infrastructure Investment Bank's committee's focus will be to provide an inclusive platform for the African and global asset owner community, specifically to design and showcase scalable, innovative net zero partnership initiatives and policy recommendations, and as many Pathfinder projects as we can that make best use of the model law on institutional investor public partnerships. So in closing, and as indicated throughout, our overarching goal is essentially to provide institutional investor leadership and advocacy to assist governments design and deliver greater public-private finance mandate alignment and more catalytic private investment pathways that fast tracks and scales private capital's participation in the green transition. And here's the point: implemented through the model law on institutional investor public partnerships and a go-to-market, institutional investor public partnership platform vehicle such as the African Green Infrastructure Investment Bank.